The infodemic around the COVID-19 is becoming alarming by the day, and governments across the world, especially in Africa, are worried. The BBC News Africa is therefore launching a searchable library of fact checks, debunking popular myths and misinformation about coronavirus on the continent. Now, during this pandemic, misinformation about COVID-19 has spread far and wide, posing a real threat to public health. We are now joined by BBC Africa journalist Yemisi Adegoke to share her perspective on this trend, bearing in mind measures being adopted by governments across Africa to stem this pandemic. Good to have you join us, Yemisi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, let's start by asking, what's the rate of fake news in comparison with authentic ones as the issue of COVID-19 is concerned in Africa?
Well, we've observed a lot of fake news spreading about the coronavirus pandemic. This even before we had recorded a single positive case in Nigeria, we'd seen a lot of fake news going around. This is obviously caused by, a certain level of panic and people being desperate for information and trying to prevent themselves from being vulnerable.
Very good. Now, what exactly is the Misinformation Hub?
So after seeing this spate of information going around, we decided that we wanted to create a hub where we will be debunking some of the most viral pieces of misinformation on the continent. So we have a fact-check library where users can search by keyword, by category, and by country. Most importantly, we've made these checks very shareable on platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook and Twitter, where we know that misinformation spreads rapidly.
Yemisi, you say these are shareable, but how can our viewers access them?
So the Misinformation Hub is currently live on the BBC Africa webpage. And if you click into any of the fact checks, you will see the little icons from the different social media platforms, and you can click on those and immediately share each fact check.
Very good. Now, in one of your projects, you told the story of a taxi driver who said coronavirus fake news nearly made him consider committing suicide. Can you talk more about this?
Yes, so this was a story that I worked on at the start of the coronavirus outbreak in Nigeria. There was a rumor that went viral on WhatsApp. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it was about a man who had allegedly driven the index case from Lagos to a neighboring state. The post said that he was demanding a ransom as not to further spread the virus. I tracked this man down to Benin City. He hadn't been to Lagos in years. He didn't drive a taxi. He was just an ordinary guy living his life in Benin City, and his life had been turned upside down by this rumor. He didn't feel safe walking around on his own. He'd received death threats, all because this photo had been used without his permission and had gone viral. And it did get to the point where he considered taking his own life. The impact on him was so serious.
Now you mention it, we do recall that particular incident. But Yemisi, considering the negative impact of fake news, do you think African leaders should in any way flirt with the idea of legislating against this?
As a journalist, I will always value and prioritize the need for freedom of speech and expression. I think that these are essential for thriving democracies. I think that the best way to combat fake news is to counter false information with accurate information, which is what we're trying to do with our database project. An important part of our fact check project is the fact that we're sharing our methodology, how we debunk these myths, so people can apply some of these tools in their own lives. But I know that legislation is always at the top of the conversation, but as a journalist, I will always prioritize the right to free speech and freedom of expression.
Indeed, freedom of expression is key. Now, Yemisi, fake news and its impact on elections. And we found out that even the most developed economies are not immune. What's your thought on that?
Yes, it's definitely something that we've seen take part in elections on the continent and outside the continent. It's definitely an issue. it's a troubling one. We saw with the Cambridge Analytica scandals and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, because of the world we live in today, fake news is here to stay, whether it be in elections or in health misinformation. It does look like it's going to be with us for a very long time.
Now, this misinformation hub is going to have 3 ratings, you say: false, misleading, and no evidence. Talk us through that.
Yes, so we have the 3 category ratings. So false information is something that we have found to be completely false, so there's no truth in that. Something that we have found to be misleading may have been something that has been taken out of context, so it might be true, the image or the video might be true, but the context in which it's being used is not accurate, so that's something that would be considered misleading. And something with no evidence is something that we cannot definitively say it's false. So we have to say that there isn't enough evidence to back it up.
All right, very good. Now, how proactive are governments? We can take Nigeria, for example, on the issue of fake news. Yes, there's been some pronouncements over people being warned not to take the issue of fake news the way it is. So how is that impacting on communication between the government and the society at this rate?
So yes, governments are trying to be proactive in how they are trying to combat the issue of misinformation. I think the concern is always that nobody wants any government to overstep and to hamper people's rights to freedom of expression. We have seen certain examples on the continent of governments perhaps overstepping the mark. So there is always that concern when the government is interfering in situations like this. But things like digital literacy, again, combating false information with accurate information, I feel are ways to combat fake news effectively. Also with transparency, that's something that the government can help with. If they have up-to-date information and they're publishing that on time and they're transparent with their information, that also helps. More independent agencies that can provide their own data and their own information. These are all things that will help. It can't just be a government issue alone. There are several steps and several stakeholders that need to work together in order to combat this issue.
And how soon, if I may ask, will we be able to access this misinformation hub? I mean, knowing that COVID-19, we know that the WHO has said that it has come to stay with us for a while, but how soon will we be able to access this information hub?
Our information hub is currently live now on the BBC Africa homepage. And what we are hoping is that the audience, they are seeing pieces of misinformation on the internet, that they will get in touch with us. They will share that misinformation with us or things that they would like checked, and we will be able to check that information. And they can do that by reaching out to us on our social media platforms. We are BBC News Africa on Twitter and on Facebook. But it's live now, and we really do hope that this is a tool that will help people make informed decisions about their lives and ultimately their health.
Very good. Yemisi Adegoke, journalist, BBC Africa. I would like to thank you for your thoughts on misinformation issues concerning the world. It's good to have you.